What is one thing that you planted later that you regretted? Ooh. Only one? Hello everyone and welcome to Vlogmas. We are doing an AMA, Ask Me Anything, where I am giving the gift of answering comments in a much longer way than just typing something out. I'm giving you whole entire videos. And today we have a question from Glory V Garden Journal. Now we answered her husband's questions. We need to answer her question, which is, what is one thing you planted that you later regretted? So I started to write down a list and then I was like, there's a couple themes starting to happen. Couple themes. So the number one thing that when I thought back, what was it that I regretted? And I feel like it took me a while to think of it because I think I like erased these from my memory. And there was a huge theme. Okay, should I say it? Well, I'll say it. Plants I bought from Home Depot and Lowe's were a huge theme. Because I started listing out a lot of individual plants and I just realized that the reason I regretted a lot of those plants was because they died. Do you feel the same? I have bought, what was it? I was doing a video like a month ago and you saw how many pots I had and I was returning, giving them to a native nursery so that they could reuse them instead of just putting them in the trash. And the reason I have so many pots that I've collected through the years, yes, there's all this, but there was a huge chunk of those that are plants that no longer are in my garden because I bought them and in a couple weeks they died. And this really is like the huge flower section in Home Depot and Lowe's. And there's a lot of reasons those don't work, right? One, if they're annuals, usually by the time they're flowering and they're in Home Depot and Lowe's, they're kind of at like the tail end of when they're at their ideal prime. So generally they just tend to feel like a big waste of money. That was kind of one thing I kept thinking about. I was like, oh man, I used to have a really pretty flower bed and I kept buying plants and 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 buying plants. I am so sorry, Cubanelle. I did not mean to beat you up over this, about my anger issues about how many plants I bought, put in, they died, went back, bought more. And I just thought I was a bad gardener. And then later from talking to the native nursery people and a bunch of other gardeners, they're like, yeah, no, but I mean, most of those, when you buy the chrysanthemums and they're already blooming, they're kind of already done by the time you're putting them in the ground. So it's not you failing, it's just you bought a plant that was on its way out. So those are one group. The next group of plants that I really regret, well, there's one. Oh my gosh, I didn't buy it. It was here from the previous owners, but I didn't know what it was. And I just thought, oh, this poor plant. It has all these roots growing up and over the pot. This poor thing. It needs to be set free and put in the garden. So I put it on the side of my house. And then we were starting to do projects over there because there was really nothing in the space. And I was like, oh, and I was digging a hole and I was like, what is this root? And this root, I was like, is it from a pine tree? But I was like, I don't think it's a pine tree. The pine trees are a little distance away. And I'm looking and I start tracing it back and it's that plant. That plant. And for those who know, only 5 feet from my house was a ficus. Oh my God. I started to look at it being like, oh my God, this thing, it was growing so fast. At first I was like, oh, I'm such a good gardener. This is clearly early in my journey. I was like, I'm such a good gardener. I put this poor little bush that was struggling and crawling over the side of the pot into the yard, and I am so good at gardening because I did this. And this thing exploded in 6 months, and we had roots this thick around 10, 15 feet from that plant in a matter of 6 months. It was crazy. I spent so much time killing that plant, killing its roots, killing it and killing it and killing it. If you know where my compost bin, if you ever watched the videos with the compost bin, that compost bin is on top of where that ficus was because I am like, you are never coming back, ever. It will not give you the light of day to survive, which I finally killed it. Which brings me to the second group of plants that I regret planting in my garden, and that has to do with invasive species. Some, like the ficus, that I found in the yard from the previous owners, and some I bought unknowingly. And those include things like snake plants existed in our yard, and I was like, these poor little snake plants. There was one that was in a pot And I was like, oh, look, they propagate so easily. Again, new gardener. And I was like, I'm gonna fill this whole bed. If you know where you ever watch the Florida Native Plant Landscaping series, it's like 20 videos long and I show you plant by plant by plant. One of the first videos is me taking out the snake plant. That was 11 plants, 11 little rinky dinky plants that I propagated, because Ben and I went searching all through the yard and we kept finding these little like snake plants. So we put them all in, all 11. And by the time you see that video, you can see like, they were, oh my God. I think that was like 1 year later and they were huge and they had filled the entire bed and they had such a huge tuber system and it had taken me a year to kill them off. Not good. Similar front was purple oyster plants. And yeah, you can buy those at Home Depot and Lowe's too. And similar thing, I was like, I am new to gardening and I found these plants and I moved one because I didn't like where it was at, and then boom, it took off and I was like, oh, so I went searching and again, I filled a bed with them and I have yet to eradicate those from my garden. They are still kind of in the back corner. If you ever watch I'm like referencing other videos so you can kind of get an idea. If you ever watch like the Florida native shade garden or shade butterfly garden videos, it's kind of in that area. There are purple oysters that keep popping up over and over and over again. And then the plants I regret that I bought, Lantana camera, invasive species. Everyone loves it from a butterfly gardening perspective, but it's an invasive species, super problematic. I've done a whole series on it, but okay, so from like take away all the bad stuff it does from the environment, just as like a personal why I didn't like it. Pruning that thing, like it's like the leaves are like sandpaper and they like give you all these like micro cuts all over. Oh, I hated dealing with that plant. It was like, yay, the butterflies like it, but I hated pruning that thing. And then when I finally took it out, oh, I had all these, like, it looked like I had like taken my arm and like rubbed it all over sandpaper. Hated it. Regretted that one. Regretted the Mexican petunias. Previous owners had some in there, but I bought one for sure because it was listed as how do they have it written? A friend of Florida plant. That's like, I think how the pot said it. It really implied that it was a Florida friendly plant, which that makes me so mad sometimes when I go into Home Depot and Lowe's and I see these plants the way that they're labeled and I'm like, I know that's an invasive species and you are implying that it's okay and actually it's good for Florida. But Mexican petunia, accidentally added that. Those things grow 5 feet tall. They will wiggle up through there, and now that we don't have the landscaping company, I gotta deal with them, so I don't know how much longer they're gonna last before I start trying to rip all that out, but at least they're surrounded by cement. So that's good. What else? Oh, I put stuff on my list. Oh, crepe myrtle. I put in a crepe myrtle. That actually just have been super slow growing. We got, what was it called, like a black diamond crepe myrtle. Very pretty looking. It has been 5 years since we planted it. It's still a twig. I mean, I'm okay with it being a twig, but that just felt like a waste of money. So I regret that one too. Now the third category, these are not bad plants. So while the first ones I'm like, it's a waste of money. The second one's like, they're invasive species and they're bad for our wildlife and ecosystem / they're a pain to deal with. This third one I'll call, it's just time. It's just time. So the third category is really plants as I thought about why did I not like them. So like this year it was loofah. That thing was such an aggressive grower and I didn't feel like I got a good return on investment. So it was kind of like in between those other two categories. It's not invasive, but it's so aggressive how much it was growing. And then I wasn't getting a good, now it's not that I'm not getting plants, but I'm not proficient. I'm not experienced with loofahs. So I'm getting like a lot and not knowing what to do with it. So it just becomes like this, like, you have a lot, go figure it out. And sometimes I don't have time to figure it out. And so now it's like they're ending up in the compost. So it just feels like a waste, you know? I don't like being inefficient and I don't like being wasteful. So I don't think loofah's a bad plant. I think it's one that I needed to have more of a game plan going into growing it than I had. So will I grow it next year? I think I'm gonna grow it again. I'm gonna grow less of it, but I would grow it again. I need to be more prepared for it because I'm not prepared for it this year and I should have been getting more prepared earlier on. So that's my thought on loofah. Another one was sunflowers. I have a lot of sunflower seeds, but I don't regret them because I love the way they looked. I am totally cool with all the sunflower seeds. Why I regret them was more of a placement thing. Learning that they're kind of similar to Lantana camera, where they can suppress other plants from growing. I regret where I placed them. So I have a very different thought process of how I'm going to deal with sunflowers next year, because I need them, like I shouldn't have put them with the corn. That was a bad idea. Because they're basically sending out like a chemical response to suppress other plants from growing near them. So that might be why my corn failed a bit earlier this year, though it's doing good, but I don't have sunflowers over there. So one might be because of what I did with the seeds this year, and the other thing might be because, hi butterfly, might be because, you know, sunflowers were near it. So that's the other one that I was just like, I don't know. And I feel like that happens regularly. When I get overwhelmed by a plant, then I'm just like, I don't know if I should have planted that. And that's where like one that you might think would be on that list, the reason sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of it all the time, which is papaya, is because I feel like it gets overwhelming at times, because I don't have a great game plan for all of the papaya I end up with. I have a game plan for some of it, and then I end up freezing a bunch of it, but I don't feel like it feels a little out of control at times to me. And so that is why sometimes I'm like, should I plant a papaya again this year? I'll have that thought, where I don't have that with some of my other favorite plants that are edible. So yeah. And then when I was thinking about it also, I was like, is there any native plants, right? Because you know I'm all about natives, but I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, they're all perfect. There's nothing to it. But I've talked about this before. Ferns, I think ferns are super annoying. They spread super aggressively. I don't care that they're native. I feel like they are high maintenance and problematic to deal with. One that's like right at my feet at the moment, I don't know if I can see it. It's just out of camera range. Railroad vine. Railroad vine is becoming quite aggressive, and I've been thinking, I told Ben, I don't think I'll keep it up front. I might move it somewhere else because it is being super aggressive, and I feel like it's going to overtake all the wildflowers that I want to highlight in this front garden. So there's this, so that third category is more of like, I'm figuring it out still, and until I figure it out, I kind of always have this feeling in my stomach of like, maybe I shouldn't have planted it. But the butterflies disagree, so you know, whatever. You know what I also regret? Not having enough butterfly weed. You know why? Because I never, ever get the flowers, because the caterpillars always eat them. I know that they say that this is so off topic, that monarchs prefer like the swamp milkweed. I find that they like the butterfly weed like a ton. So, because I never get to see the flowers. I will see swamp milkweed flowers, but I do not get butterfly weed flowers, because they, just as they're about to open, come out the next day, they're all gone. Go figure. So I hope my regrets are helping you. That basically, one, if you're gonna buy annual flowers from Home Depot, just be prepared to sink a lot of money into it and not get a good return on your investment. Two, watch out for invasives. Invasives, you can get way more invasives than you can get native plants at Home Depot by like 10, 20, 30 fold, 100 fold probably. I probably only know 2 native plants that you can buy from Home Depot and Lowe's, and I know tons of invasive plants that you can buy from there pretty easily. Stay away from the houseplant section and don't put any houseplants in your garden, because yeah. And then 3, you know, I think the other takeaway is, when it comes to new plants, especially ones that are going to be a little bit more aggressive, like loofahs and stuff like that, you know, have a game plan so you don't get overwhelmed, and you don't feel like me going like, maybe I shouldn't have planted it this year. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if you would like one of your comments answered in one of these videos, go ahead and leave one down below. I will be continuing to answer these throughout the Thanksgiving and Christmas season. So make sure you hang out for the entirety of Vlogmas. There'll be new videos Monday through Friday between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.